Hello everyone, this is Chirag Joshi. Today I want to share with you my thoughts on two very interesting developments that I've seen in the world of cybersecurity recently. The second one is especially relevant for an Australian audience. Now, for the first one, this is related to targeting of critical infrastructure by nation-state actors. We have seen advisories issued on this front both in the US and here in Australia. In fact, the issue is so serious that the FBI director in the US essentially said that these nation-state actors are looking to create havoc for American citizens and targeting United States critical infrastructure. Now, critical infrastructure has always been a really important focus for cybersecurity efforts, and that's something that has kept a lot of people awake at night, is the implications of cyber threats against critical infrastructure that actually impacts human lives and can bring the economies of countries to a standstill in times of conflict. So again, a key area. However, what I want to talk about today is the guidance that has come about on the back of this nation-state activity. I'll share a lot of resources with you that you can read up and get a lot more in detail, but for the purposes of a short video, I'll keep it simple. By the way, I'm in no way downplaying the impacts of these. I've already said this is really important and the advice given is really valuable. However, when you look at the advice, a lot of it is still very much foundational cyber hygiene in practice. Think about this. We're talking about a nation-state complex attack, but the guidance is still foundational and hygiene driven because that is the most important thing. What are we seeing in the ways of guidance? And again, goes to the importance of the basics, right? Patch, especially the high impact critical internet facing systems that have known threat actor indicators of compromise available or known exploits available. So I think the threat intelligence aspect of it, along with proper vulnerability management, is essentially such an important control here. And the second thing called out is related to centralized logging and monitoring for key events and key logs in our critical systems, right? Again, a basic, very important control. But I also urge you to think about the use cases that are relevant. Just logging and monitoring everything is not as straightforward as it sounds, as most of the security practitioners know. So we got to be very smart about the events, the systems, the type of use cases, the threats that we are looking to, essentially uncover and block and act upon. That goes into centralized logging and monitoring. The other one, which is a really relevant one, because we're talking here about critical infrastructure, we're talking about physical systems, we're talking also about operational technology systems. And we know IT systems and OT systems, they're very different in how they are built, how they're designed, and how they are managed. So it's not as straightforward to patch things in an OT environment. However, network segmentation and segmentation between environments is such a valuable control. Now, when people talk about network segmentation, this is not just a technical control, by the way. I've seen far too often, products thrown into the mix, tools thrown into the mix, security, networking. But really, if you look at the rule sets, if you look at the orchestration, the policy setup, they're not really doing the job. So network segmentation actually requires you to go beyond just thinking about technical controls. It's actually an exercise in understanding your business, you're understanding your data flows, understanding what is expected as regular behavior. So that's absolutely essential, but network segmentation features prominently. Now, access management, identity and access management, a core control. And everything in security, cybersecurity, starts with access, right? That's where the game is. Now, I want to talk to you about different aspects of that because that gets called out in the different advisories that we see. Obviously, it's a given that we should not have vendor default passwords. We are in 2024. Let's please stop that practice. It's a given that we need to move beyond passwords and MFA. Multi-factor authentication is such a vital control, right? Regardless of how we implemented it, having it there is substantially better than just relying on passwords. Having multi-factor authentication is a good thing, but we know that multi-factor authentication is increasingly being bypassed and compromised by threat actors because they're looking at that control closely and bypassing it. And typically, if you think about MFA, and I want to talk about this specific attribute to you today and go into a little bit more detail, because it's important, is the aspect of phishing resistant multi-factor authentications. For us to understand what that is, think about MFA today. Most of the times what it means is we rely on a code or a token being sent to via SMS or an app or email, and we use that to log in. The problem with that is it still significantly relies on the human factor, which means that we can be tricked into giving away that credential through social engineering means, right? Giving away that token, and that bad actors can use that to log into the environment and get access and create havoc. So that is where the challenge lies. Now, phishing resistant MFA looks to take away the human factor or minimize it as much as possible. And that is done through means of things like FIDO authentication, where instead of the human factor being still core to the story, they rely on devices, and I'll keep it simple. They rely on devices, be it hardware token or in some cases your phone or devices, to actually authenticate and log on, right? And they do that through the means of a certificate-based authentication, and they rely on things such as biometrics to add that layer of security. So that simplifies the process to a degree and allows you to create more phishing resistant MFAs. So that's something that we need to really think closely for our organizations. I don't expect this to happen overnight, by the way. I know a lot of organizations are still struggling to roll out basic MFA, so I get the challenge. But as we think in the future, and especially for critical infrastructure, this is something that we got to pay attention to. So at least let's start going into a bit more detail about what this could mean and starting to pilot where logical some of these approaches. So I already wanted to cover that aspect. So that was the first part. Again, lots to read there, lots to cover, and maybe I'll do another video on this in the future. I'll share resources. Now the second part, very relevant to Australian audiences. Here in Australia, the Australian Cybersecurity Strategy 2030 has been front and center, and our government has actually come out and done some really great things in creating and looking to operationalize a single reporting portal for cybersecurity incidents. I'm such a massive advocate of this effort because having worked in different industries across different verticals, I get how important this is. However, I encourage you to go and take a look at the link I'll share, where our government started to put together at least the initial view of the single reporting portal on cyber.gov.au, and you'll get to see the different sectors listed there, the different applicable requirements if it applies to you, be it being a listed entity, having critical infrastructure, foreign investments, and so forth. And based on the permutation and combinations, you see a list of different reporting obligations that apply to you. It's a staggering list. So what I encourage you to do, if you haven't done already, is please speak with your legal and regulatory teams and get your incident response plans aligned. I'm not talking about your technical incident response plans. I hope you're working on it. That's just an obvious one. What I'm talking about here is the timelines, the reporting cadence, the expectations for external entities, and you really need to get that sorted with your legal and regulatory teams. In the heat of incident response, where you're trying to triage, where you're trying to contain, where you're trying to eradicate, when you're trying to maintain logs, in that process, it's really impossible to get all this right, or really, really difficult, even if not impossible. So I highly encourage you to start preparing and working with your teams to get the regulatory and legal reporting timelines aligned. So please do that, because that's not just a CISO function or a security function. It's actually a whole of organizational effort is reporting material incidents. So I encourage you to reflect on that. All right, hopefully you got some value from this video. I keep sharing more content which is organic, authentic, and I hope you like it. If you like it, please share your comments and thoughts. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.